Hey everyone, and welcome back to Thought Pairing. Today we're going to be diving deep into this book that's been making waves in the business world and even beyond. I'd say it's Ray Dalio's Principles.
Yes.
And I've got my friend Suchi here who actually just finished reading it, and I'm really eager to hear her take on it.
Yeah.
So Suchi, welcome to the channel.
Thanks for having me. Excited to break this down.
Yeah, so before we get lost in the specifics, can you give us like the elevator pitch?
Okay.
What's the heart of Dalio's principles? Like, what's the main idea?
Yeah, so I think Dalio lays out a very personal and professional philosophy in this book.
Right.
It's really shaped by his experience building Bridgewater Associates, which is this world-leading hedge fund.
Oh, well.
And the book's central idea, I would say, is that success in any area of life boils down to understanding and adapting to reality.
Okay.
Even the parts of reality that are harsh, and he even calls himself a hyper-realist.
Hyper-realist.
Which pretty much sums up his whole approach.
Okay, so I'm guessing it's more than just, seeing the world for what it is.
Yeah.
What does that look like in action based on Dalio's principles?
You're right. It's not just about observation.
Well,
Dalio really believes that most people have this, struggle to accept reality when it clashes with their desires.
oh, yeah.
So they might, cling to outdated beliefs, or they make emotional decisions when really
Makes sense.
what he's saying is hyperrealism is about constantly seeking truth no matter how painful it is, and then using that understanding to make better choices.
So it's like actively seeking out those cold showers of reality, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Dalio isn't just theorizing here, right? He's built this whole approach based on his own experiences. And I know he's had some major setbacks in his life.
Exactly. And actually, that's one of the things that struck me most about this book was his willingness to just share his own failures.
Yeah.
Especially early on in his career. Think about it. In 1982, he lost everything. When his prediction about a debt crisis totally backfired.
Whoa. That's a pretty intense example of reality hitting hard.
Totally.
So it sounds like that experience was a huge turning point in his thinking.
It was a defining moment for sure.
Okay.
But instead of letting it crush him, he really used it as a springboard to go deeper.
Okay.
He dove deep into studying historical economic cycles, and he emerged with this even stronger conviction that understanding cause and effect relationships was key.
So it wasn't just about picking himself up, but about dissecting why he fell in the first place.
Exactly. He realized that even with all the hard work and all the knowledge, certainty is still elusive.
Yeah.
So he shifted his focus to developing principles that could guide his decision-making in a way that maximized his chances of being right over time. So it's less about predicting the future perfectly and more about building a system that kind of tilts the odds in your favor.
So he's almost like a scientist running experiments on his own life to figure out what works.
I like that, yeah.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of Bridgewater, I'm kind of curious about Dalio's background. Did he always have this hyper-realist streak?
Yeah, he actually shares some really interesting glimpses into his early life.
Okay.
From a young age, he was a very independent thinker. He wasn't a fan of rote learning, but always driven to figure things out for himself.
Interesting.
He even started working various jobs around 8 years old, gaining experience outside the traditional classroom.
Wow. So he was getting real-world lessons as a kid.
It seems that way. And this independent streak also shines through in his early fascination with the markets, which started around age 12.
Mostly 12.
Yeah, in trading, where you're constantly betting against the consensus and often being wrong, further instilled in him the importance of learning from mistakes and having a clear decision-making process.
So it's almost like those early experiences prepped him for the challenges of building a company like Bridgewater.
Right.
It wasn't just about trading stocks, but about developing a mindset that could handle uncertainty.
Yeah.
And adapt to constant feedback.
That's a great point. And this brings us to Bridgewater and the unique culture that Dalio fostered there.
Okay.
It's known for its radical transparency, which wasn't accidental.
Okay.
Dalio deliberately cultivated it based on the belief that open and honest communication leads to better decisions and stronger relationships.
Now, from what I've heard, that radical transparency takes some pretty unconventional forms at Bridgewater.
It does.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for instance, nearly every meeting at Bridgewater is recorded and archived, and it's accessible to anyone in the company.
Really?
The goal is to build a culture where people can learn from each other's experiences, even the mistakes, and build this collective knowledge base.
It's like having access to a library of past decisions and their outcomes.
Exactly.
Which can be pretty invaluable.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that level of openness is pretty mind-blowing. It's hard to imagine most workplaces embracing that.
It is.
Did Dalio talk about how that culture took shape and what were the initial reactions?
He did touch upon that, and as you can imagine, not everyone was thrilled about the idea.
Yeah.
Some people found it uncomfortable or intrusive.
Understandably.
But Dalio believed that with a sensible approach, people would come to appreciate its value over time.
So how did he manage to make this radical transparency work practically? It seems like it could easily lead to chaos or conflict, especially within a company.
Right. And he wasn't naive to the potential downsides.
Okay.
He emphasizes the need for clear rules and processes to make it function effectively.
Okay.
So, for example, systems for handling sensitive information responsibly and addressing conflicts constructively were crucial.
Yeah. So it's not just about throwing all information out in the open, but about creating a framework where it can be used constructively.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Did he share any specific examples of how this played out in the book? Any real-world stories from Bridgewater?
Oh, definitely. He talks about how open feedback and debate, even at the highest levels, helped Bridgewater identify blind spots,
Oh, wow.
correct errors, and ultimately make better decisions.
So it's almost like having a built-in error checking system, but for the company's overall direction.
Yeah. I like that.
It makes me wonder, were there any, major pushbacks or challenges he faced while establishing this culture? I imagine getting people on board with that level of transparency wasn't always smooth sailing.
No, definitely not. One of the biggest challenges he talks about was overcoming people's natural resistance to being so open about their mistakes and weaknesses.
Right, because it's human nature to shy away from potential judgment or negative consequences,
Exactly.
even in an environment that encourages transparency.
Right. It's almost like asking people to willingly step out of their comfort zones.
So how did he deal with that resistance? Did he have any strategies to kind of ease people into this new way of working?
He stresses the importance of patience and understanding that adapting to this level of transparency takes time.
Okay.
And he mentions that new hires typically go through an 18 to 24-month acclimation period at Bridgewater.
Wow.
Before truly embracing the culture.
That's quite a while. It really highlights his commitment to the long game when it comes to cultural change.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if it didn't work out, there were consequences.
You're right. He's not afraid to let go of people who ultimately can't or won't adapt.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that maintaining the culture requires making tough decisions to ensure everyone is aligned with these core values.
So it's like saying, this is the playing field. If you don't feel comfortable playing here, that's fine.
Exactly.
But it might not be the right fit.
Right.
That's a bold approach to building a team, prioritizing cultural fit above all else.
Yeah.
It seems like he's betting big on this radical transparency shaping Bridgewater's success.
Absolutely. He sees this culture as foundational to Bridgewater's success.
Okay.
He believes that a strong culture of truth and transparency leads to more meaningful work and relationships,
Well,
which in turn drives better outcomes for the company as a whole. It's like building a house on a solid foundation. Everything else flows from there.
that interconnectedness between culture, work, and relationships is really interesting. And it all circles back to those early experiences of failure and resilience we discussed earlier.
You nailed it. Those experiences instilled in Dalio a deep appreciation for honesty, open communication, and continuous learning, which became the bedrock of Bridgewater's culture.
It's like his life experiences are reflected in the company's DNA.
I love that analogy.
I'm really intrigued to hear more about the specific tools and techniques Dalio used to put these ideas into practice at Bridgewater.
I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of our discussion.
Okay, cool.
There are definitely some fascinating tools and strategies that we can delve into.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear about it.
So you're curious about those specific tools Dalio used?
Yeah, definitely. It's one thing to talk about transparency and learning from mistakes, but actually implementing those concepts company-wide
Right.
seems like a whole other challenge.
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Well, one tool that really stood out to me was this idea of baseball cards for employees.
Baseball cards. Now, that's not something you hear every day in the corporate world.
I know, right?
How do baseball cards fit into a hedge fund?
So imagine these baseball cards were essentially profiles
Okay.
that listed each employee's strengths and weaknesses,
Okay.
along with ratings based on various assessments they'd done.
So kind of like a stat sheet for each person,
Exactly.
highlighting their, unique skills and areas for improvement.
Exactly. And the idea was to use these cards to inform decisions about assigning responsibilities,
Oh, wow.
putting teams together,
Interesting.
and even anticipating potential issues before they cropped up.
It's like having a quick reference guide to understand everyone's capabilities
Right.
and how they might work best together.
Exactly.
I can see how that aligns with Dalio's emphasis on understanding reality.
Mhm.
In this case, the reality of each individual's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Did he use any other tools to get this level of insight?
He also talks about utilizing various personality assessments, like the Myers-Briggs, to kind of delve deeper into how people are wired differently.
Okay.
It wasn't about putting people in boxes,
Right.
but understanding their natural inclinations and how those tendencies could be leveraged within the team.
So it's not just about tolerating individual differences, but like actively using those differences to build more effective teams?
Exactly.
I like that.
He even shares a story about how these tools helped him address an issue with one of his executives, Bob Prince.
Okay, what was the situation with Bob? Was he not fitting into this culture of transparency?
It wasn't about cultural fit,
Okay.
but was brilliant at coming up with big picture ideas.
Okay.
But he struggled with the detailed execution needed to bring those ideas to life.
Oh, so it's like that challenge where you've got these great ideas,
Yeah.
but putting them into action is a whole other ballgame.
Exactly.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
For sure.
So how did Dalio help him overcome that?
So to support Bob Dalio, brought in a deputy who excelled at bridging that gap between the big picture vision and the nitty-gritty steps of execution.
So it wasn't about replacing Bob,
No.
but finding someone who could complement his strengths and help him succeed.
Exactly.
So by analyzing those baseball cards and understanding Bob's personality type,
Yeah.
they were able to pinpoint exactly what qualities were needed in that deputy role.
Exactly. It's about finding the right puzzle pieces,
Okay.
understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each,
Yeah.
and fitting them together to create a more complete picture.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And this whole concept ties into something else we've touched on.
Yeah.
This believability-weighted decision-making.
Yes.
That feels like a pretty radical departure from how decisions are usually made.
It is.
Can you unpack that for us a bit?
Yeah. So Dalio believes that decisions should be made by the people who are most believable in a specific area.
Okay.
Meaning they have a proven track record of success in that domain, and they can articulate their reasoning clearly and convincingly.
So it's not just about who has the fanciest title
Right.
or has been at the company the longest, but about who genuinely understands the matter at hand
Yeah.
and has the experience to back it up.
Exactly. And Dalio went as far as to build systems at Bridgewater to track and weight people's believability
Really?
based on their past performance and the quality of their arguments.
So it's like building a data-driven approach
Yeah.
to determine whose opinion should carry more weight in certain situations.
Exactly.
Wow, quantifying expertise and using that data to make more informed decisions.
Yeah.
That's like a whole new level of data-driven management.
It is.
I imagine the system encourages some pretty intense debates, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dalio firmly believes that constructive disagreement is essential for getting to the best possible solutions.
Okay.
He even compares great collaboration to playing jazz.
Playing jazz.
Yeah.
That's an interesting analogy. How does that relate to decision-making in a hedge fund?
So he compares it to a jazz ensemble where each musician is a master of their instrument. But they also listen intently to each other, building off each other's ideas to create something truly unique and harmonious.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about voicing your own opinion,
Right.
but about engaging with others' ideas,
Yeah.
finding that synergy,
Mm-hmm.
and creating something bigger than any one person could achieve alone.
Exactly.
I like that.
And Dalio stresses the importance of having clear rules and processes for engaging in these disagreements,
Okay.
like defining whether you're acting as a teacher, a student, or a peer in a given situation.
So it's about setting the stage for a productive exchange of ideas,
Right.
where everyone feels heard and respected, even if there are disagreements.
Exactly.
It sounds like he's trying to find a balance between passionate debate and maintaining a respectful and focused environment.
Yeah.
But what happens when those disagreements can't be resolved through discussion alone?
Right. So in those cases, Dalio advocates for using believability-weighted voting to reach a decision. So everyone still gets a say. But the weight of their vote depends on their proven expertise in the relevant area.
So it's a system that seeks to find the best ideas,
Yes.
regardless of where they originate,
Right.
while still acknowledging the importance of expertise and experience.
Exactly.
You know, as you're describing all this, I keep thinking about the challenges of scaling this culture as Bridgewater grew.
Yeah.
Did Dalio address that in the book?
He did. He acknowledged that as the company expanded, maintaining those close personal connections and ensuring everyone deeply understood the principles became much more difficult.
It's like trying to keep that small company feel as you grow into a larger organization.
Exactly, which can be quite challenging.
What steps did he take to address that challenge? Did he have to make any compromises on the radical transparency?
He realized that relying on implicit understanding wasn't sustainable anymore. So he started codifying the principles, writing them down explicitly, explaining the logic behind them in detail.
So it sounds like he was transitioning from leading by example to building a more formalized system that could scale with the company's growth.
Exactly. And this effort to codify the principles ultimately led to him writing the book that we're discussing today.
Oh, wow. So it's like taking those internal principles and sharing them with the world.
Exactly.
Hoping to spark similar approaches in other organizations and individuals. It makes sense that he'd want to share these ideas with a wider audience. And judging by the book's popularity, it seems like a lot of people are finding value in his principles. Even outside the world of finance.
For sure.
Did he talk about how these principles could be applied more broadly?
He emphasized that the book isn't meant to be a rigid blueprint. He encourages readers to adapt his principles to their own unique circumstances and contexts.
So it's more like a framework for thinking about how to build a better life and a better organization. Rather than a set of hard and fast rules. This has been a fascinating discussion, Suchi. We've covered so much ground, from Dalio's personal experiences and the unique culture at Bridgewater to the specific tools and principles he champions. But there's one core principle we've touched on that I'd love to explore further. This idea of embracing reality and dealing with it head on. Even when it's tough. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a fantastic principle to delve into deeper. It's something that resonates with a lot of people, but can be incredibly challenging to put into practice.
Welcome back to Thought Pairing. We're wrapping up our deep dive into Ray Dalio's principles.
It's been quite a journey, exploring his journey and his philosophy and that unique culture he built.
Before we went to the last segment, you're talking about this importance of embracing reality and dealing with it, even when it's painful. That's something a lot of us struggle with, I think. Why do you think Dalio put so much emphasis on this idea?
Well, I think he believes that our biggest obstacles to growth are often our own egos and blind spots. We resist seeing things that challenge our self-image or contradict our beliefs. But by clinging to those comfortable illusions, we prevent ourselves from truly learning and evolving. It's like we're holding ourselves back.
So it's about being willing to challenge our own assumptions. Look at things from different perspectives, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Exactly. And Dalio believes that radical open-mindedness is the key to overcoming those barriers. It's about genuinely worrying that you might be missing something and actively seeking out different viewpoints, especially those that disagree with your own.
So stepping outside of our echo chambers and embracing the discomfort of being challenged.
Exactly.
That takes a lot of humility, especially for someone in a leadership position.
It does.
It's almost counterintuitive to what we traditionally think of as a strong leader.
Absolutely. The Dalio argues that true leadership isn't about pretending to have all the answers. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to challenge ideas, point out flaws, and push for better solutions.
So fostering intellectual humility. Recognizing that the best ideas can come from anyone, regardless of their position.
Exactly.
This reminds me of the believability-weighted decision-making we talked about earlier. It's not about who's in charge. But about finding the best ideas wherever they come from.
Exactly. Dalio believes that organizations thrive when they have a culture of open debate and evidence-based decision-making. And that requires leaders to be willing to let go of their ego and prioritize the pursuit of truth over the need to be right.
It's recognizing that being wrong can be a valuable learning experience. And that admitting mistakes can actually strengthen your credibility.
Absolutely.
One thing that strikes me about Dalio's principles is how much they emphasize personal responsibility. It's not about blaming others or complaining about circumstances, but it's about taking ownership of your choices and outcomes.
Definitely. Dalio is a big believer in having an internal locus of control. Meaning you believe you have the power to shape your own destiny. He sees complaining as a waste of energy that could be better spent on finding solutions and driving progress.
So it's about focusing on what you can control,
Yeah,
taking action to create the outcomes you desire.
exactly.
It's almost a Stoic philosophy.
Right.
It's, focusing on what you can control and accepting what you can't.
There are definitely some parallels there. And
Yeah.
like the Stoics, Dalio sees challenges and setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth.
Okay.
It's not about avoiding pain, but about using it as fuel to become stronger and more resilient.
So adopting a growth mindset,
Yes,
embracing the idea that we can continuously learn and improve even from our mistakes.
exactly.
So in essence, it's not about seeking a pain-free existence,
Right.
but about developing the mental fortitude to face challenges head-on
Yeah,
and extract valuable lessons from them.
you got it. And he even talks about the importance of choosing your habits well.
Okay.
He believes that by consciously cultivating habits that align with your goals, you can essentially rewire your brain to make success more automatic.
Interesting.
It's about understanding the power of habits and how they shape our daily actions
Yeah.
and ultimately our long-term outcomes.
So we're not just victims of our circumstances.
Right.
We have the power to shape our own behavior and ultimately our own future.
Exactly. It's about taking control of the steering wheel
I like that.
and navigating towards the destination we desire.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Suchi, this has been a fantastic discussion. Thanks for sharing your insights on principles with us.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's given us a lot to think about.
It has.
And for all of you watching, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Ray Dalio's principles.
Ah.
What resonated with you? What challenges do you see in applying these ideas to your own life or work? Share your comments below, and let's keep this conversation going.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Thought Pairing for more deep dives into fascinating ideas. We'll see you next time.